Just one night of less than 6 hours of sleep makes you legally drunk when it comes to your reaction times, and temporarily pre-diabetic when it comes to your metabolism. 60% of your brain's garbage disposal system shuts down, leaving toxic proteins floating around your head while you try to work the next day. In this video, I'm going to show you a specific 10-minute exercise that acts like an emergency brake for your body when you've had a terrible night of sleep. If you stick with me to the end, you'll have a completely free, science-backed tool you can use anywhere to clear brain fog, lower your heart rate, and fix your blood sugar before lunch. But don't skip ahead, because doing this at the wrong time of day actually makes your sleep tonight even worse. Let's get into it. Welcome back to 30-Day Health. If you're new here, hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear is going to blow your mind and totally change how you handle your mornings. We all know we should get 8 hours of sleep. Every doctor, podcast, and health guru screams it at us constantly. You open your phone and someone is telling you about their perfectly optimized sleep cave, their blackout curtains, their cooling mattress, and their strict evening routine. And sure, in a perfect universe, we would all turn our screens off at 8 o'clock, read a paper book by candlelight, and drift off into 8 hours of uninterrupted bliss. But life happens. You have a crying baby who wakes up every 2 hours. You have a stressful deadline at work, and your brain just refuses to shut off. You have an argument with your partner right before bed. Or maybe you just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling for hours, watching the clock tick from 2 to 3 to 4 in the morning, doing that awful mental math where you calculate exactly how few hours you have left before the alarm goes off. When that happens, and that alarm finally screams at you, is your day just completely ruined? Are you doomed to damage your heart, fry your metabolism, and age your brain at an accelerated rate? Or is there an actual biological undo button you can press to save yourself? Before I show you the exact 10-minute fix, you need to understand the exact enemy you are fighting. You need to know what happens inside your body the second you step out of bed after a bad night of sleep. Because it is not just about feeling a little tired. Your body goes into an active state of biological panic. First, we have to talk about the cortisol trap. When you don't sleep, your body does not understand that you were just tossing and turning because of a work email. Human biology is incredibly old, and it operates on ancient survival mechanisms. As far as your nervous system is concerned, if you are awake all night, it means you are in danger. Your brain assumes a predator is hunting you, or your tribe is under attack, or you are starving and need to stay awake to find food. Because of this perceived threat, your adrenal glands dump massive amounts of stress hormones, specifically cortisol, into your bloodstream. Cortisol is not inherently bad. It wakes you up in the morning. But when you are running on empty, your body floods your system with it just to keep you upright. Your heart beats a little faster. Your breathing gets a little shallower. You are in a mild, continuous state of fight or flight. But the scariest part of a bad night's sleep isn't what happens to your brain. It's what it does to your blood sugar. Wait until you see this. Because your body thinks it is in a survival situation, it completely changes how it handles energy. It wants quick, accessible fuel floating in your blood so you can run from whatever danger it thinks is keeping you awake. To do this, it makes your cells temporarily insulin resistant. Insulin is the hormone that acts like a key, unlocking your cells so they can absorb sugar from your blood and use it for energy. But after just one single night of partial sleep deprivation, your insulin sensitivity can drop by up to 25%. One night. That means the doors to your cells are jammed shut. The sugar stays trapped in your bloodstream. This is exactly why you get massive cravings for junk food when you are tired. Your cells are literally starving for energy because they cannot absorb the sugar in your blood. So they send panic signals to your brain screaming for high-calorie, sugary foods. You eat a donut, your blood sugar spikes even higher. Your body pumps out more insulin trying to force the sugar into the resistant cells, and eventually your blood sugar crashes hard, leaving you feeling even more exhausted than before. You are temporarily pre-diabetic, and then comes the vicious cycle. You feel this crash coming, so what do? You drink a massive cup of coffee. Or 3. You chug an energy drink. You do whatever it takes to survive the fatigue. But that caffeine spikes your cortisol even more. It artificially blocks the sleepiness signals in your brain, pushes your heart rate up, and keeps you locked in that fight or flight state. You push through the day on fake chemical energy and stress hormones. And because your cortisol is sky high and you have half a pot of coffee in your system, when night finally rolls around, your nervous system is too wired to calm down. You get into bed exhausted, but your heart is thumping, your mind is racing, and you sleep terribly again. The cycle repeats. So, what is actually happening up in your skull while all this is going on? What is the physical cost of skipping sleep? To understand this, we have to talk about something called the glymphatic system. Up until about 2012, scientists did not really understand how the brain cleaned itself. The rest of the body has the lymphatic system, which clears out cellular waste and toxins, but the brain does not have lymphatic vessels. So, how does it get rid of the garbage? In 2012, a researcher named Micah Nettergaard discovered a hidden plumbing system inside the brain. She called it the glymphatic system. Here is how it works, and it is absolutely fascinating. Every single time a brain cell fires, every time you think a thought, solve a problem, or send an email, your brain cells produce metabolic waste. It is just like a car engine producing exhaust. One of the main byproducts of this brain activity is a toxic protein called amyloid beta. If that name sounds familiar, it is because the buildup of amyloid beta plaque is one of the leading markers of Alzheimer's disease and severe cognitive decline. During the day, while you are awake, these toxic proteins build up in the spaces between your brain cells. Think of it like a busy, crowded city. Throughout the day, people are throwing trash out onto the sidewalks. The garbage piles up. But you are too busy running the city to stop and clean it. Sleep is when the garbage trucks come out. But it gets even crazier than that. When you enter deep sleep, your brain cells actually physically shrink. They decrease in size by up to 60%. They shrink down so that the spaces between the cells get wider. Then, a massive wave of cerebrospinal fluid rushes through your brain tissue, washing away all the amyloid beta and metabolic trash that built up during the day. It is literally a biological power washer for your brain. But if you do not get deep sleep, if you only sleep 4 hours, or your sleep is constantly interrupted, the garbage trucks go on strike. Your brain cells do not shrink. The fluid cannot wash through the tight spaces. You wake up the next morning and up to 60% of that toxic garbage is still sitting right there in your brain. And the reason why this happens? It totally flips everything we thought we knew about resting. We used to think sleep was just a time when the brain turned off. We thought it was a passive state, like putting your laptop to sleep. But it is not. Sleep is an incredibly active, biologically expensive process. Your brain is working incredibly hard to clean itself, repair tissues, and consolidate memories. When you cut that process short, you spend the next day wading through biological garbage. This is why you have brain fog. This is why you cannot remember the name of that person you just met. This is why you drop your keys, or forget why you walked into a room. Your brain is literally, physically swollen with its own toxic waste. You are trying to run high-level software on a computer that is overheating and choked with dust. If you've ever felt that gross, heavy head feeling after a bad night of sleep and this is suddenly making total sense to you, hit that like button and subscribe. We're just getting started and the fix is easier than you think. But honestly, the brain fog isn't even the most dangerous part. What's happening in your chest is way worse. When you miss sleep, your heart and your metabolism take a massive, immediate hit. The CDC actually put out a terrifying statistic about this. They found that being awake for just 18 hours or getting less than 6 hours of sleep impairs your cognitive and motor reaction times to the exact same degree as having a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%. If you get even less sleep, it pushes you up to the equivalent of 0.10%. You are legally drunk. Your reflexes behind the wheel of your car during your morning commute are the same as if you had pounded 3 beers before starting the engine. You think you are fine because you are awake, but your reaction time is shot. And while you are driving to work legally impaired, your chest feels tight. You feel that low-level hum of anxiety. This is because sleep deprivation aggressively ramps up your sympathetic nervous system. That is the fight or flight side of your nervous system. At the same time, it suppresses your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest side. Your heart rate variability, which is the measure of the time between your heartbeats, completely plummets. A healthy heart does not beat like a metronome. It speeds up slightly when you breathe in and slows down when you breathe out. That flexibility shows that your nervous system is relaxed and adaptable. When you don't sleep, that flexibility disappears. Your heart just hammers away at a rigid, stressed pace. It is exactly like driving a car on the highway but refusing to shift out of first gear. The engine is screaming. The RPMs are in the red zone. You are burning through gas at an insane rate, and you are slowly destroying the engine block. You can survive like that for a little while, but eventually something is going to blow. This is the reality of a bad night of sleep. High cortisol, locked up insulin, a brain full of toxic plaque, a heart stuck in first gear, and the reaction time of someone who just left a bar. So, what do? If you are sitting at your desk at 10 in the morning, feeling all of this happening to you, how do you stop it? You cannot go back in time. You cannot just sleep under your desk. I'll show you exactly how to do this 10-minute routine in a second, but first you need to know the one mistake that ruins it. You cannot rely on coffee. You cannot rely on sugar. You need a biological intervention. You need a way to manually reach into your own nervous system and flip the switch from panic mode back to recovery mode. Enter NSDR. NSDR stands for non-sleep deep rest. It is a term coined by Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neurobiology researcher at Stanford University. He popularized this term to describe a specific, highly structured practice of conscious relaxation. You might also hear it referred to as yoga nidra, which is the ancient traditional practice that modern NSDR is heavily based on. This is not meditation. It is not jumping jacks. It is not taking a nap. When you try to take a nap, you often just lay there stressing about the fact that you aren't falling asleep, which just spikes your cortisol even more. NSDR is a guided audio protocol that forces your brain and body into a state of deep, profound relaxation while you remain entirely awake. It is a biological hack. It is basically a hard reset button for your nervous system. Think of it like unplugging a frozen, glitching computer, waiting 10 seconds, and plugging it back in. When you do an NSDR protocol, incredible things happen inside your body very quickly. Stanford researchers have studied this extensively. They found that engaging in just 10 to 20 minutes of NSDR can mimic the restorative physiological states of up to 2 hours of deep sleep when it comes to specific neurochemical replenishment. Let me say that again, because it is wild. 10 to 20 minutes of this practice can give your brain the chemical equivalent of a 2-hour deep sleep cycle. Specifically, NSDR replenishes dopamine in an area of the brain called the striatum. Dopamine is not just the reward chemical that makes you feel good when you scroll social media. It is the molecule of motivation and motor control. When you are sleep-deprived, your dopamine reserves are completely depleted. You feel zero motivation to do your work. You feel sluggish. You want to give up. NSDR manually refills that dopamine tank. At the same time, the specific breathing and focusing techniques used in NSDR force your sympathetic nervous system to shut down. The fight or flight alarm gets turned off. Your heart rate drops. Your breathing slows down. Your blood pressure normalizes. And because the panic signal is turned off, your adrenal glands stop pumping out cortisol. When the cortisol drops, your body realizes it is no longer in danger. And what happens when it is no longer in danger? It stops hoarding sugar in the blood. Your insulin sensitivity begins to recover. The doors to your cells unlock. Your blood sugar stabilizes, and those intense, aggressive cravings for donuts and pizza start to fade away. If this is blowing your mind that you can literally hack your nervous system in 10 minutes, drop a comment below and tell me how many hours of sleep you actually got last night. Also, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss these health deep dives. So how do you actually do this? How do you perform NSDR? It is incredibly simple. It is completely free and you can do it almost anywhere. Here is the exact step-by-step protocol to rescue your day. Step 1. Find a quiet place and get flat. You need to lie flat on your back. You can do this on a yoga mat, on the floor of your office if you have a private space, on a couch, or on your bed. If lying flat is absolutely impossible because you're in a cubicle or a car, you can sit heavily reclined in a chair. But flat on your back is best. Uncross your arms and legs. Let your hands fall to your sides. Close your eyes. Step 2. Put on headphones. You do not do NSDR in silence. You need a guide. Open YouTube or Spotify and search for a 10-minute NSDR track or a 10-minute Yoga Nidra track. Dr. Andrew Huberman has a completely free 10-minute one on YouTube that is fantastic. You need the headphones because you are going to let the voice of the guide take complete control of your attention. Step 3. You are going to manually slow down your heart using a breathing technique called the physiological sigh. Before the audio track even gets deep into the body scan, you need to break the stress cycle in your chest. The physiological sigh is the fastest, most scientifically proven way to lower your heart rate in real time. Here is how you do it. You take 2 deep inhales through your nose, back to back, followed by 1 long, slow exhale through your mouth. But the craziest part is still coming. Because this doesn't just wake you up, it actually physically changes the size of your brain cells. Let's break down why that double inhale works. Inside your lungs, you have millions of tiny little air sacs called alveoli. When you are stressed, when you are sleep-deprived and breathing shallowly, these little air sacs collapse. They flatten out like deflated balloons. When they collapse, oxygen cannot get into your blood efficiently, and carbon dioxide builds up. This buildup of carbon dioxide tells your brain that you are suffocating, which triggers more panic and more cortisol. When you take that first deep inhale through your nose, you fill your lungs about 95% of the way. But it is that second, quick, tiny inhale right at the top that does the magic. That sharp second intake of air creates mechanical pressure that pops those collapsed alveoli back open. It physically inflates the deflated balloons. Then, you do the long, slow exhale through your mouth. Make the exhale longer than the inhale, like you are blowing out a candle through a straw. When you exhale slowly like this, a fascinating mechanical process happens in your chest. Your lungs empty, and your diaphragm moves up. Because the diaphragm moves up, there is suddenly less space in your chest cavity. This means your heart actually becomes slightly smaller for a second. Because the heart is smaller, the blood flows through it faster. Your body has highly sensitive neurons located around the heart that detect this faster blood flow. They send an immediate signal up a massive nerve called the vagus nerve, straight to your brain. The signal says, "Hey, blood is moving too fast down here. Slow the heart down." And the brain immediately fires a signal back to the heart, forcing it to beat slower. You are using the mechanics of your lungs to manually force your brain to slow down your heart rate. It is an absolute biological cheat code. You do this physiological sigh 3 times at the start of your NSDR practice, and your heart rate will plummet. The panic alarm is officially off. Step 4. You follow the body scan. The voice in your headphones will start asking you to focus your attention on very specific parts of your body. They will say, "Focus on your right big toe. Now focus on the bottom of your right foot. Now your ankle. Now your calf." This sounds like basic relaxation, but what is happening in your brain is incredibly complex. When you are stressed and tired, your brain defaults to something called the default mode network. This is the network responsible for mind wandering, ruminating on the past, and stressing about the future. It is the network that keeps you trapped in your own anxious thoughts. When you force your brain to focus intently on a specific physical sensation, like the feeling of your left kneecap, you drag your brain out of the default mode network. You force it into the present physical moment. Your brain cannot actively stress about a work email while simultaneously devoting intense neurological focus to the sensation of your big toe. The mental discipline of following the guide's voice completely short-circuits your anxiety. You drift into a state between waking and sleeping. Your brain waves slow down from fast beta waves into relaxed alpha and even deep theta waves. Real quick, before I give you the exact step-by-step routine and the one major rule you have to follow, if this video is helping you out, consider subscribing. It helps the channel a ton. And I promise to keep bringing you stuff that actually works. So you finish the 10-minute track. You open your eyes. You will feel a bizarre sense of clarity. The heavy, burning sensation behind your eyes will be reduced. Your chest will feel light. Your breathing will be deep. You just successfully hit the reset button. But there is one massive rule you have to follow, or you will ruin your next night of sleep. You must do this NSDR protocol before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Why? Because of a chemical called adenosine. Adenosine is the sleep pressure chemical. From the moment you wake up in the morning, adenosine starts building up in your brain. The longer you are awake, the more it builds up, creating a heavy pressure that eventually makes you fall asleep at night. When you do NSDR, because you are dropping your brain into such a deep state of rest, you actually clear out a small amount of that adenosine. If you do this at 10 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon, it is perfectly fine. It clears just enough brain fog to get you through the rest of the workday. But if you do an NSDR protocol at 6 or 7 in the evening, you will clear out so much adenosine that when 10 o'clock rolls around, you won't have enough sleep pressure to fall asleep. You will lay in bed wide awake, completely ruining your sleep for a second night in a row. So keep it in the morning or early afternoon. If you are skeptical that 10 minutes of lying on the floor can actually do all of this, look at the real-world examples. Look at the people who use this when the stakes are literally life and death. Let's look at the Stanford Sleep Lab again. Researchers took subjects and kept them awake, monitoring their blood glucose and cognitive function. When subjects were allowed to just sit quietly or scroll on their phones, their blood sugar remained volatile, and their focus continued to crash. But the subjects who were put through a dedicated NSDR protocol recovered their baseline focus. Their blood glucose spikes smoothed out. Their nervous systems adapted. The data clearly shows that deliberate, guided rest is biologically totally different than just sitting on a couch. Or look at high-stakes performers. Military pilots, special forces operators, and emergency room surgeons. These are people who regularly have to perform highly complex, dangerous tasks after being awake for 48 to 72 hours. They experience hallucinations. They experience microsleeps where their brain shuts off for 2 seconds while their eyes are open. They cannot afford to have the reaction time of a drunk driver. So what do? They use these exact deliberate decompression and body scan tactics. A soldier in a trench or a pilot in a noisy transport plane will put on noise-canceling headphones, close their eyes, and run through a systematic nervous system reset. They manually shift their biology from sympathetic panic to parasympathetic recovery in a matter of minutes. It allows them to maintain metabolic and cognitive function when their bodies are screaming for sleep. If it works for a fighter pilot on day 2 of zero sleep, it will absolutely work for you after a bad night in your own bed. So, what is the big takeaway here? The truth is, you cannot perfectly replace lost sleep. There is no biological substitute for an 8-hour night of deep, uninterrupted rest, where your glymphatic system washes your brain and your cells repair themselves. You cannot cheat sleep forever, but you do not have to be a victim to a bad night. You do not have to write off the entire day as a loss. You do not have to punish your body with massive amounts of caffeine and sugar just to survive until 5 o'clock. By using this 10-minute NSDR exercise, you are taking the steering wheel back from your primitive survival brain. You are manually turning off the biological panic alarm. You protect your brain from toxic buildup by lowering the stress that prevents any sort of daytime clearance. You save your heart from working overtime by forcing the vagus nerve to slow down your pulse. And you stop the blood sugar roller coaster by telling your cells that the danger has passed, allowing your insulin to function normally again. You take back control of your day, your mood, and your health. So, next time you wake up feeling like you've been hit by a truck, legally drunk on exhaustion, and craving a box of donuts, don't panic. Don't just chug a pot of coffee and hope for the best. Find a quiet spot, lie down for 10 minutes, and press the reset button. Your brain, your heart, and your metabolism will thank you.